Hey everyone, it's Tim Holtz and I'm here at Sizzix headquarters. Now, I love working with embossing folders. I like to call them texture fades because I designed them to have a lot of different texture and variety. But did you know that there is a way that you can control exactly where to put that texture? Let me explain a little bit. These are embossing diffusers. What they're designed to do is actually diffuse your embossed design, and they come in a variety of different shapes. There are circles and ovals, squares, rectangles and arches, and hearts. And what they look like is they're this plastic material that actually replaces a cutting pad, and it comes with the frame itself as well as the inserts. And I'm going to explain why I wanted to include not only the frames but the insert pieces, because the effects, especially when you have different shapes and sizes, are very, very cool. You think, why would I want to control the embossing? Well, let's explain. When you work with an embossing folder, usually it's designed to emboss a pattern all over your background. Of course, that will allow you to layer other die-cut shapes or anything on top of it. But what if we wanted to incorporate, I don't know, a stamp or an image, and I didn't want texture everywhere? I wanted to control my embossed design. This is the effect that a diffuser will do. It will diffuse that actual space, creating a smooth surface, allowing me to incorporate a stamp, right? A smooth surface that I could stamp or journal or do anything on, and that really makes even more creative potential for your embossing folders. Here's how easy it is to do. I'm going to start with just my cardstock, whatever surface that I want to do. I'm going to place it into my embossing folder, all right? Now, of course, normally we would just sandwich this and that would give us our all over pattern. So here's what the diffusers do. They're designed with this opening, and I'll get to this other little piece a little bit later, but the opening is actually offset, and it's offset on purpose because that's going to allow me to place this down and determine where exactly I want to diffuse that pressure. Okay? So this gave us just a little bit of play, so I don't have to worry about it always being in the center if I don't want to. In fact, you could even flip this over if you want to bring that a little bit lower. As long as that's going to cover, that diffuser will cover your entire embossing folder. All right? So right now I've got it positioned where it's going to diffuse that area, which means there is no pressure when I run it through the machine. Now, I mentioned this is going to replace a cutting pad, and that's important when we build our sandwich. So the first thing I like to do is, once I decide where I want to put the diffuser, I'm going to secure that with some tape. This could be washi tape, this could be any type of tape that is going to be easily removed. And I want to hold that in place because I'm going to give you a little trick. All right, so once that is secured, I'm going to take the parts that I need for my machine. I'm going to work with a Vagabond. Of course, you can also work with your Big Shot. So we're going to need our platform. Now, we're not cutting, so we don't need any other adapters, and we're going to need just one of the cutting pads because the diffuser replaces a cutting pad. So get this second one out of your way. This way you don't accidentally overload the machine. Now, when I mentioned the sandwich, that's going to be one on top, one on bottom. Just like before, we want that embossing folder right in the middle. But I don't like to run my diffuser to where it actually touches the roller of my machine, because by doing that, it will wear these down. So all you need to do is, once your sandwich is made, flip it over to where my cutting pad is on the top. That's what's going to touch the rollers of the machine. This way my diffuser is protected. So let's run it through the machine. We'll place this down, go right on, push our button of our Vagabond. There we go. And here is what we're going to end up with. Look at that. We actually get a diffused area, a smooth area that you control exactly where that is. And that's going to allow you to do all sorts of different things. So let's take it up a notch and talk about what can we do with this space besides just stamp it. Well, one of the things that was important when I designed diffusers was really think about, beyond just taking that shape and diffusing it, what else could we do? What would I want to do? Well, in my world, if it's not worth inking, it's not worth doing. So I want to ink it. And here's the different effects we can create with our cardstock. We can take this and we can leave it plain, or we can add one color of ink or a couple of colors. And here's the whole importance of working with the diffusers. I'm going to take the background that I did, and I'll take the piece itself. Now, here's the great thing about these. These are plastic. They're thick plastic, just like a cutting pad. So I'm going to use this as a template, as a mask. So if I want to just ink that diffused area, I can place this right back down, and I can take my favorite inks. Of course, I'm going to work with Distress ink. You could take a blending tool, or I like to take a blending brush. I like something that can get into that area. So I'm just going to take this brush. I'm just going to apply some ink to the bristles, and I'm going to place this down. And this is going to allow me just to go into that opening with my inks and ink that area. And by placing this right over that, it's going to protect the rest of my background. Just like that. Look at that. See how that really adds a lot more depth to that diffused area? Pretty cool, right? Well, let's say we wanted to just do the opposite. Maybe we just wanted to color our emboss design and we didn't necessarily want to color the inside. Well, that's where the other little pieces come in. So I'll show you this. I'm going to take the positive piece. This is the piece that when it's manufactured, they actually have to cut this out. So I said, you know what? We need to include that. Even though we're not going to diffuse with it, I like to use it as a mask. So I can place this down over that space I diffused, and that's going to allow me to ink around it with ease. I don't have to create another mask or anything because it comes with the set of diffusers. So here, let's go in and we'll take, well, I think I'll go back and just use the same color. You'll get the idea. I'm just going to take that and I'll place my hand down, and that's just going to allow me just to go in and ink. And I'll actually leave a space this time, because that's another thing. You may want to just work with one color of ink. And you can see that I'm using that brush just to go in and ink around it. And that is going to protect that surface. So this, of course, gives you full control as to where you want to put the ink. And that's the importance of the diffusers, whether you're going to use the positive or the negative of that design. You're going to use this to diffuse, and you're going to keep these pieces for all of your inking and masking. So one important thing to remember is that even if you're not a stamper, you can use diffusers to highlight your favorite die cuts. That's what I use them for, because you can take something that we have created that diffuse space, we have inked the inside, the outside, and take your favorite die cuts and simply add them to that diffuse space. It's so cool to do. So one of the important things once you understand the whole basics of diffusing is choosing the right pattern. And here's what I mean. When we're working with our embossing folders, it is important that depending on what shape you want to diffuse, in this case I'm diffusing the heart, you want to make sure that your embossing folder has a very small repeat pattern, because this way we can actually identify or recognize that heart pattern. If our embossing folder has a lot of bold design, really busy like this flourish, you may diffuse it down here and not really recognize that shape. But that's okay. It doesn't mean that you still can't use that shape. What you would do, and I'll show you this card down here because this is the perfect example of that, is that you can still diffuse that space, but then fill it in with your favorite die cut or sentiment or any of that. So just keep that in mind when you're working with diffusers and your embossing folders. Different patterns are going to give you an overall different effect. Take a look at this clever idea. This is using the arch diffuser and then using die cuts over the top to use that diffuse space as a shape itself and really create a great background. You've got that nice negative space that you can go in and do your background stamping, your inking, and just use diffusers in any creative way you can imagine.